So it is 2024. We're in a presidential election year. What have been the changes to the voting procedures from 2020 to 2024, or even 2022 to 2024, if any?
Well, as you know, we had record turnout all across the United States in 2020. We were really excited to see a ton of people, especially young people, showing up and exercising their right to vote. And on the heels of that, we saw legislation introduced in almost every state and legislation passed all across the country that really aimed, instead of celebrating a high voter turnout, it aimed at limiting who could turn out and who could have their voice expressed in an election. So we're now in a different environment as we go into this election cycle. We've seen new restrictions on vote by mail. We've seen a limiting in some states of early voting. And we've seen directly targeted issues across the youth vote with, trying a state saying a student ID is no longer an acceptable form of ID for the election. So voters this year are going into a little bit different of an environment. Of course, we have a state by state story on that. But that's what we've seen since the election. The good news here is that people are still registering to vote. We're seeing a lot of engagement on the site, and I think that there'll be a lot of activity ahead of these elections, despite the fact that people are trying to make it harder for people to vote.
You said that there are laws being introduced in every single state, but not enacted in every single state, correct?
That's right. That's correct.
So the states that have been able to successfully make major changes, are you noticing a trend? Like, are those swing states specifically, or what are the demographics of the states that are actually making those changes?
Well, it's not surprising that the places where demographics are changing the fastest in the country, like Texas and Georgia and Florida, are some of the states implementing the highest number of these laws. For us at vote.org, since we're a digital platform, we've filed lawsuits in Texas, Georgia, and Florida over the issue of whether or not you can use a digital signature or a wet signature on forms. For instance, in Georgia, on the absentee request form, they passed a law now that says you have to have a wet signature on your absentee request, which means you have to print it out, get a pen and paper, an envelope, a stamp, and send it into your local office, where you used to be able to just request your absentee forms on vote.org and upload your signature, and you could do it from your phone in 2 minutes or less. So that's an example of some of the laws that we've seen, and vote.org is working really hard to try to find a remedy for voters all across the nation.
With the laws constantly changing, how does vote.org help voters figure out, the new rules and also navigate these changes?
Well, we have the rules in all 50 states. You can go to vote.org, just click on your state and get the information you need to register to vote, to request your absentee ballot, to find your polling location. One of the things that we've done to address this issue is in Georgia, we started a print and mail program. So that means that we can actually, you can fill out information and we can print and mail your application to your house. We then get a barcode that we put on the envelope so we can track it, and we know when people receive it, sign it by hand, or down there they call it pen and ink, and then send it back in. If you don't send it in, we can send you a text message to make sure that you get your absentee request form in. So that's just like our print and mail program is one of the ways that we've tried to address this. Of course, it takes extra resources and extra time and extra staffing to make sure that we can pull this off for voters, but we don't want these new laws to get in anyone's way of expressing their right to vote.